You'll find a number of people here in Washington who work on Middle East issues and are knowledgeable about Saudi Arabia. But many people have only limited knowledge.
Well, I know that it's a large country, oil-rich, and it's run by a ruling family. Well, I think it's a friend of the United States, and I think that they have a good relationship.
First, it's a country with a great cultural background. It's one of the richest culture in the world. And currently, they also rich in other things like gold.
What do you know about Saudi Arabia?
Not very much. Not very much at all.
Okay. From what you do know, you have any kind of opinion about the country, good or bad?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Well, I happen to have a client who operates a chain of chicken restaurants there, Al Baik. Don't know if you've ever heard of them, so I know a little bit.
I know Saudi Arabia is the largest of the Arab countries. They still have a monarchy, a lot of oil, and the United States is very dependent on Saudi Arabia for oil. Beyond that, not much detail. You have the holy city of, is it Mecca? And Medina? Medina is in Saudi Arabia too, yeah? And the capital is Riyadh. Yeah, how about that?
The American business community, however, has lots to say about the kingdom. John Duke Anthony is an expert on the Gulf region and heads a leading organization that promotes better relations between America and the Arab countries. He says the kingdom has used its oil wealth wisely.
Oil money, to be sure, has provided the government with the wherewithal, the necessary revenues to put into place the infrastructure. In most countries, the private sector does not put in the infrastructure, the railroads, the bridges, the highways, the dams, and the airports and the seaports. They take advantage of those facilities when the government does put it into place. Saudi Arabia has done just that with its oil revenues, and not just in terms of the infrastructure. It's diversified the economy. It's not simply just an oil producer and an oil exporter. It also produces gas, and it's gone heavily into petrochemicals. And I remember when they first began to go into petrochemicals, people said that this is foolish. You'll be embarrassed to death because there's never been industry created in a desert in history thus far. Saudi Arabia has proven that to be the lie. Saudi Arabia is a robust producer of petrochemicals.
He says Saudi Arabia is seen as a good place to invest.
Yes, in terms of repatriation of profits, in terms of there being no personal income tax, I mean, this would seem like a nirvana were the situation to be replicated here in the United States. And so for the corporate investor, the business entrepreneur who's seeking to maximize their profits and to repatriate their profits and to use Saudi Arabia as a springboard to other markets in the region, because Saudi Arabia is the headquarters of the Gulf Cooperation Council. It's got 5 neighboring markets. They're committed to a common market. They're committed to a common external tariff. You don't have anything like that in the Nile Valley region or the Eastern Mediterranean or Arab North Africa. It's unique, it's distinct, and quite exceptional in those regards.
Mr. Anthony thinks the frustrations that have led to the so-called Arab Spring of pro-democracy protests sweeping the Arab world are largely absent from the kingdom.
You don't have the same kinds of issues that inspired the revolts in Tunisia and Egypt to a degree, as well as in Syria to a substantial degree, in Yemen. When we talk about the burgeoning youth that sees no prospect, that has no dignity, has no hope for employment, has no hope for marriage, has no hope for affordable housing, has no hope for even access to affordable housing because of the massive unemployment. Saudi Arabia, of course, is hardly bereft of blemish, not devoid of defect, but things being comparatively judged. It's in a completely different situation in terms of the atmosphere in the moment of protest and needs and demands in Saudi Arabia versus elsewhere. You have a situation where the government could hardly have been more generous in terms of being forthcoming with regard to scholarships. There's some tens of thousands of Saudi Arabians studying here in the United States for their higher education there. Large numbers equally in Great Britain and Europe and Asia as well, showing that the government is investing in the future to have a knowledge economy on top of the energy resource and import-driven economy.
As Saudi National Day approaches, many Americans have only a vague idea of what kind of a country Saudi Arabia is. But those who are more knowledgeable typically point to the kingdom's economic prosperity and its important role in the Middle East and the world. Burton Bolag, KSA2, Washington.